Welcome, my friends, to the Bob and Brad podcast. My name is Mike Kienitz, and I'm a PT assistant. Today, I am interviewing Rick Olderman, who is a physical therapist, on different back pain questions that our audience had for him. We are going to talk about things like sciatica, stenosis, disc herniations, and many more. So, without further ado, here is Rick. Well, welcome back to the program, Rick.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Today, we're going to be talking about different back pain questions, lots of different topics. So the first question is about sciatica. So our listener said sciatica, they are experiencing it for the first time, but there are thousands of people on pain forums suffering. What can we do?
Oh gosh, this is such a good one. In fact, I just had a telehealth visit from somebody who had sciatica. And there's two patterns of issues that typically are affecting sciatica. All right. One is the most common type of back pain pattern is that the back is too arched, or there's too many forces trying to pull it into an arch. So one of the clues, if you have sciatica, I think one of the clues is if you can lie with your legs straight and that makes your sciatic symptoms worse, or if standing makes your sciatic symptoms worse, then you probably have this arching phenomenon going on where your back is either too arched or you have too many forces trying to pull it into an arch. So what are those forces? Where are they coming from? Well, they're typically coming from the legs. So one of the big ones is thigh muscle tightness. And so the thigh muscles here attach to the front of the pelvis. This is the front, all right? And when the thigh muscles become tight, they tend to pull that pelvis forward, which creates this arch in your back and causes that excessive arching phenomena that I was just describing as a contributor to your sciatic pain. And also, if you have one thigh muscle that's tighter than the other, then you've got not only that arching, but you've got this rotational torque that's occurring through the pelvis and spine too in response to that. So this is a main issue, and stretching the thigh muscles can do a lot to solve sciatic pain, especially if it's unilateral sciatic pain. Another habit that's contributing to this arching phenomenon is if you lock your knees when you're standing and walking. You can try this just standing up right now. Just go ahead and stand up and lock your knees back, and you'll find that your back is more arched. And if you're not sure about that, unlock your knees for just a second and feel what just happened to your back, and then re-arch them, and you'll feel that the back is definitely more arched when my knees are locked. Well, when your knees are locked, it's tilting the pelvis forward, which is then causing that back to arch more again. And then the other thing that's happening when your knees are locked is that it's turning off key muscles in the pelvis that control the thigh bone tracking. And this can also cause sciatic pain. So I'm kind of giving you so when you look at the body from a system standpoint, it's usually not just one thing. It's several things that are causing problems. And so if you know that arching of your back increases your sciatic pain, then locking the knees, tight thighs, hip muscles that are likely turned off because you're locking the knees are all contributors. So that's one pattern of issues that's contributing to sciatic pain. The other pattern is that, especially if it's unilateral or unilateral SI joint pain or unilateral back pain, is usually that one side of the pelvis is higher and that usually that same side of the rib cage is lower. So what I call this a side bending problem. And you can imagine that if this is occurring in you, we're compressing the nerve roots from where the sciatic nerve is emanating from. All right. So this is occurring and it's causing this compression. So the real reason though is why is this occurring? Well, typically it's due to an old injury in the same side of that leg where the sciatic pain is. And so what happens is your brain responds to that pain. It's like stepping on a tack all the time. There's some problem here, and the brain's saying, you know what, I got to get off this problem. And so what it does is over time, it gradually lifts that pelvis higher and higher to get off of that problem area. Well, then the same muscles that are lifting the pelvis are the ones that are attaching to the rib cage that pull the rib cage down. So now you've got this side bending problem occurring that's causing a new problem, which is sciatic pain because of compression of the nerve roots exiting here. And frankly, this also causes SI joint pain and so forth. So ultimately, you'll have to solve whatever is occurring in this leg that's causing this side bending problem. All right. So this is what was really interesting with the telehealth patient I just had a couple days ago, is that he had right sciatic pain right here. And so as a consequence, he kept standing more on his left side, all right, to get off of that sciatic pain. Well, that makes sense because we don't want to stand on something that's painful. But I want to take you guys through this little experiment to show you the consequence of that. So let's say we all have right sciatic pain, and put your hands on your waist muscles right here, just above your pelvis, right in the waist area. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep our hands right here. And what I'm going to ask you to do now is we're going to pretend like we have right sciatic pain. So we're going to get off of that by shifting to the left leg. And when you shift to the left leg, you'll notice that your right waist muscles now have contracted more. All right. These are the same waist muscles that are pulling that pelvis higher and pulling the rib cage lower. So if we stay on this left leg all the time, and what this gentleman was doing is every time he walked, he would stay here on the left leg and do this, and then get back over to that left leg. So these waist muscles were always contracting. And so he was contributing to the pattern that was causing his sciatic pain, because he spent all of his time over on the other leg to get off of that sciatic issue, which caused that pelvis to lift more and the rib cage to drop more. So when I asked him to get over on his right side, what he ended up doing was I said, okay, now stand on your right side and put your weight over there. And what happened is he dropped his shoulder and his hip went out like this, because he didn't have the control of that right side. Everything was collapsing. And this is why when he steps on his right leg, with everything collapsing, he feels that right sciatic pain. And then when he steps on his left side, the pattern stays because it's now locked in. And then he goes back to his right like this. And I'm dramatizing. It wasn't quite like that, but that's generally how it works with this stuff. And this also happens while sitting too. So if we continue with our hands on our waist idea, if we shift our weight over to that left side and we feel that right waist muscles have now been contracted, if you look in the mirror, you'll see that your pelvis has also come up higher too on the right side. All right. And then if we do this long enough, it just locks in like this. Now, if we shift our weight over to our right side, you'll feel that relatively those waist muscles will relax again, right? And that your left waist muscles are contracting. So what we need to do is learn to stand on the sciatic pain side with lengthening of the trunk instead of collapsing on that side. So we're going to have this lengthening instead. And what that's going to do is going to teach your hip muscles and leg muscles what to do to control this side. When we collapse on that right side, it's because of a lack of control for some reason here, or we're compensating for some painful injury or something. And so it's this collapse that's causing the compression and the sciatic pain. So learning to walk tall on that right side was one of his exercises I gave him, is to be tall, even putting his right hand up in the air and hand on the head. When you walk on that side, it keeps the rib cage from falling down. It forces this side to be lengthened, and therefore gives more space to the sciatic nerve roots. And therefore it's forcing the hip muscles to work the way they should. So what often happens is, okay, now we've solved that problem. And what someone will say is, oh, but that makes my knee hurt, or that makes my foot hurt, or that makes my hip hurt. Well, now we're on to the true source of the sciatic issue. Because if walking correctly is causing a pain to occur in your leg somewhere, then that is the pain that's causing that whole side bending problem in the first place. And you have to solve that. And that's what I mean by when one side of the pelvis is higher and the rib cage is lower, it's ultimately due to some problem in that same leg that you have to solve in some way. So that was a long answer to a short question.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us again. Where can people find more information about you at?
If they go to rickolderman.com, I have lots of free stuff there. I have some blogs. I have all my home programs, my practitioner training program. And there's a contact form there, of course, for me that you can use to reach out if you like.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, Mike. Thanks for having me.